What's going on, guys? It's your boy DJ Skandalous here, and today we're going to break down some recent Snoop Dogg news involving Tupac. Let's get it.
I'm built for it, nigga.
Alright guys, so this probably flew under the radar for a lot of people. However, Snoop Dogg did a live video on Instagram, a live stream, with Fatman Scoop. And on this live stream, he broke down different aspects of Tupac regarding how he feels that Tupac would engage his fan base as well as the general public with everything going on now in relation to the pandemic as well as the riots. He also broke down what other rapper that he feels was closest to Tupac in terms of his energy and overall stage presence. However, I was most intrigued by this part of the live stream where he basically talks about mumble rappers and how Tupac would respond to him. Here's the clip.
Being that you knew Tupac so well, what would Tupac be doing or saying if he was here today?
If he was here today, first of all, these whack-ass rappers and this soft-ass cream puff shit that's going on in the industry, he would have a big voice against that. Sort of kind of like what I'm doing, but I just don't have time to get involved so much, but he would make it a must to abolish all of that weak shit because he's one that really understands and respects hip-hop for the culture and what it was built on and what it was built for. So he definitely would have a voice against that. And then all of this police brutality.
I find this really interesting because for so many years, I felt like the reason as to why rap has turned to what it has is because there's no Tupac, there's no Biggie, there's no Eazy-E, there's no Big L, Big Pun. We see this all the time, people debating what rap would be today if those rappers were still alive. And there's so many people that, basically combat that and say, oh, well, they wouldn't have much of a change. We've seen Ice Cube saying that rap would still be the same, which I believe is complete bullshit because Tupac had such a overall demand and such an overall presence within the market. He basically dominated hip hop for the last 2 years of his life. And you can argue that he dominated 97, 98 as well. Now, obviously, Tupac dying gave rise to the likes of Eminem, Ja Rule, DMX, as well as Nelly, but I still believe the likes of Eminem was still shot up out of nowhere around 97, 98 as well, even if Tupac and Biggie were still alive. Now, I don't know if Jay-Z would have been as big as what he was. I also think DMX would still blew up, but I'm not too sure about Ja Rule, since there's that whole history there of Ja Rule swagger jacking Tupac, stealing his lines and songs, stealing his concepts, his beats of his unreleased songs, as well as his song titles. But I feel like a lot of rappers would have still came out, such as Nelly, DMX, and Eminem. But Tupac, right before he passed, he was still evolving as an artist. When you check out the last couple of songs that he made while alive, Hell for a Hustler, All Out, and Let's Get It On, it was very different than what you hear on Machiavelli. He was very rough with his vocal tone. He had more emotion and more passion in his overall vocals than what you hear on mostly any other song that he recorded. So I still believe he was evolving as an artist and he never hit his prime. And it's so crazy that we think that Tupac was in the prime of his career. He was only 25 though. Look how many years Jay-Z and Eminem had. Over 30 years of rapping. And still people think Eminem is still a great lyricist. And I think that Eminem became a better lyricist later in his career, as opposed to the early 2000s, when you would think his prime was. But we know Tupac had many movie roles on the horizon, Baby Boy, Star Wars, Who with Jada Pinkett Smith, a Three Strikes movie with Snoop Dogg possibly. So Tupac was going to do a lot, and he also was going to manage his own sub-label under Death Row called Machiavelli Records. And then there was also Death Row East, which was going to be managed by Eric B. of Eric B. and Rakim. So there was rumors around that time, right before Tupac passed, that Death Row East and Machiavelli Records were going to sign rappers such as Mary J. Blige, Big Daddy Kane. Obviously, Tupac was still writing songs and recording songs for MC Hammer, as well as you had the debut of the Outlaws, their own album, as well as Danny Boy on Death Row. And there were talks also of the Wu-Tang Clan signing with Death Row Machiavelli. So I think hip-hop would have been forever changed and a lot different than the way that we see it now, because Tupac would have spearheaded it as a manager, as pushing out artists that he signed to his label, as well as having those artists appear on his albums as a way of cross-promoting his artist. So when you look at it, I think by the time the early 2000s would have came around, he would have had these artists and they would have been the vocal point of hip-hop. And I think Biggie would have also dived into the business world, acquiring maybe clothing companies, maybe doing fragrances and colognes and stuff like that, as well as maybe having some stock into an NBA team like the Brooklyn Nets, New Jersey Nets, something like that. So I think Biggie could also had his own sub-label too around this time. So I think hip-hop would have been very different because you would have had two main big-time artists that were at the top of the hip-hop Mount Rushmore, so to speak, of the 90s. And I think they would push out artists that they could relate to and also share the same type of lyrical qualities, influential qualities as himself. And obviously, like I said, I think Eminem would still blew up with Dr. Dre, and I believe they would have still found 50 Cent. However, it's hard to tell where the likes of Crooked I, Nipsey Hussle, the game would have been within the industry if they would have been signed to the labels that they were signed to, or Tupac would have signed them, as well as YG. So I definitely think by the year 2010, Biggie and Tupac would have shaped what hip-hop was going to be for the next 10, 15 years because they would have signed these artists and pushed them out. So there would have been no room for much mumble rappers or rappers that don't have lyrical content. And it's kind of crazy because people just say, oh, Tupac didn't have that impact. But I think as a businessman, him becoming a movie star as well as running a record label, I think he would have more impact than anybody on hip-hop. We see what Jay-Z does. We see what Diddy does in the business world. I think Tupac was going to be way bigger than that. So guys, how do you feel about this? Do you think that Snoop actually meant if Tupac was still alive, that these mumble rappers would never came out, that Tupac would have squashed them even before they even had the chance to grow and become musical artists, or not even give rise to them because of the way he would have transformed music himself? Or do you think he's basically saying that rappers that snitch on one another would have no place in hip-hop? Because let's be real, hip-hop in the 90s and hip-hop in the early 2000s was much more gangster than the way it was now. You didn't see rappers apologize in a week after they just started dissing each other like Drake and Meek Mill. You know, some rappers actually got shot after dissing one another. And maybe, just maybe, Snoop Dogg is actually referring to his beef with Tekashi 6ix9ine. If you aren't familiar with the beef, it all started with Tekashi 6ix9ine of him sharing a video of himself watching a Suge Knight documentary where Suge Knight basically discusses how some gang members end up staying out of trouble by becoming informants for the police. Within that clip of that documentary, Suge actually lumps Snoop within that group, but he doesn't clearly come out and say Snoop ever ratted on anyone. And then 6ix9ine posted a video of himself watching the actual documentary as if it's like proof that other rappers in the industry ratted on others to police officers and basically became informants to stay out of trouble. And then 6ix9ine also posted a message to Snoop Dogg saying welcome to the family. As you can imagine, Snoop went off on Tekashi and clarified the situation with Suge Knight. And Snoop went on to say, I ain't have nothing to do with Suge Knight getting time, we had the same lawyers. This rat called me a snitch, and FYI, most likely drew up the papers he do work for the police. Suge and me on great terms now, so if I told on him, we would never be cool, and that's a fact, clown. So maybe, just maybe, he'll talk about Tekashi 6ix9ine, basically implying that if Tupac was alive, Tekashi 6ix9ine wouldn't even be in the game right now. So guys, let me know how you feel about Snoop's comments. Also be sure to check out my Skandalous Talk channel, where I have more breakdowns of this interview on there. This is DJ Skandalous signing out. Peace out.